Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. I've had a lot of ups and downs with this series, so I appreciate it if you'll bear with me a moment. Quite a few years ago now, I picked up the first volume to a manga series called Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter. I don't know how many times I've said I prefer to wait until a series is complete to start it, but every once in a while I get it in my head that I'll start a newer series and try to keep up with it as it's publishing. I almost always end up falling behind and catching up later. That's what happened with this series too. Except when I finally checked back in, the manga hadn't made nearly as much progress as I'd been expecting. It began publishing in 2015, and Volume 9 is expected to be released this summer, in late July of 2026. We are not even advancing at the rate of one volume a year. Even my patience isn't endless. But I really hate to drop anything without seeing it through to the end, so luckily I discovered something else. Though the manga seems to have stalled to a crawl, this story also has an 8-volume light novel series that was completed in 2018. Looking at the publication dates, it actually looks like maybe the manga was always the adaptation and is just struggling to catch up for some reason. All I can say is that I was happy to take this as my out and read the light novels instead, so I could finally put this series to rest, one way or another. It's kind of funny to look back and realize the isekai genre may not have been quite so cliché yet when this series first began, but now it's a very familiar premise. An ordinary office worker dies in an accident and wakes up reincarnated as a character in her favorite dating sim game. The catch? She finds herself thrown into the body of the villain at the crucial moment where everyone turns on her and her life is ruined. In the game, you would have played as Yuri, an ordinary peasant girl recently adopted by a baron, later revealed to be his biological illegitimate child. This catapults her into high society, as she's enrolled in the prestigious academy all the children of the nobles in the country of Tasmaria attend. If you pursue the main story route, you'll end up courting Edward, the kingdom's younger prince, virtually guaranteed to become king and make you queen, as his older brother Prince Alfred has been mysteriously missing from court for some time now. But this route comes with an added challenge, as Prince Edward is already engaged to one of your classmates, Iris Lana Armelia, daughter of the Duke of Armelia, the wealthiest, most prosperous province in the kingdom. Iris, understandably I'd say, doesn't take too kindly to Yuri coming in and trying to steal away her fiancé. If you play your cards right, the story ends with Iris being expelled for bullying you and sent away to live as a nun for disgracing her family. Of course, in this version of the story, Iris is our protagonist. She regains the memories of her past life, and crucially, the level-headedness and maturity of a woman in her 30s, rather than an emotional 16-year-old girl whose life is falling apart, in the middle of the final intervention staged by Yuri's army of suitors. She's still expelled, but this time she's able to walk away with her head held high. Similarly, the meeting with Iris's father goes very differently. Edward's actions, breaking off their engagement so cavalierly, has political implications, not just personal ones. Just because he's the prince doesn't mean he's untouchable, and there was already a storm brewing in this kingdom over which prince had the right to the throne. It's one of those wonderfully complicated nobility debacles where Alfred's the firstborn, but Edward's mother holds a higher rank, so it's not a cut and dry succession. With Iris on his arm and the support of House Armelia behind him, his power was all but guaranteed. Now, a civil war in Tasmaria's future is looking a lot more likely. So it's as much for this reason as his daughter's sudden maturity that the Duke decides to send her back to Armelia as its acting governor, while his work keeps him in the capital city. He trusts her to strengthen their own land in preparation, and strengthen it she does. There were a lot of big points I wanted to make about this series. They're all kind of running into each other, but I do want to try to keep them organized. As I said at the start, Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter is an isekai story, a genre I haven't always had the nicest things to say about, and honestly, Iris is generally my least favorite kind of isekai protagonist, the wish fulfillment vessel, beloved by all, unreasonably good at everything, ostensibly because her ordinary, everyday life experiences in this world gave her some inherent knowledge about how to succeed in her next one. And there were definitely some developments that made me want to roll my eyes. Like, she tours the country, looking for a way to bolster their economy, and discovers that they just happen to produce all the raw materials needed to make chocolate, something that doesn't exist yet in this world. She basically creates a business empire on desserts, teas, fancy shampoos, and clothing items that she used in her first life that hadn't been invented here yet. And Rhea, the author, really works to make it so that she's not totally insufferable about it. The Azuta Corporation is truly the product of teamwork, of consulting experts in each field to help her bring her dreams to life. Ironically, I think they make her a little too humble at times. It's insufferable in a different kind of way for Iris to be totally oblivious while having to listen to the constant praise everyone else is always heaping on her. And there was another area where Iris was just a little too perfect. She's supposed to be the villain, but there's really no need for any kind of redemption. As soon as she returns home, she's surrounded by this group of orphans that she rescued from the streets as a child, who've grown up to be her personal servants. And they'd all willingly sacrifice their own lives rather than let anything happen to her. It just so doesn't mesh with the sort of selfish, petty heiress we're supposed to believe she started out as. She tries to explain it away as her past life personality always being dormant within her, and maybe peeking through to give her the insight to see even people living in poverty as human beings worthy of kindness. It wasn't my favorite element. It actually made me reflect on, and gave me a better appreciation for, an anime I reviewed a few years ago. Tear Moon Empire isn't actually isekai, but it has the reincarnation element. Mia Luna Tear Moon was the cruel, self-centered princess of the Tear Moon Empire. When the royal family is overthrown, she's executed in front of a crowd cheering on her death. But then she wakes up a few years before the revolution and is determined to do whatever it takes to avoid her fate at the guillotine a second time. Tear Moon Empire isn't anything super deep. It's this cute, fun little watch, but it scratches an itch that tends to drive me a little crazy when I watch or read so many of these isekai stories. So often I find myself wishing the creators would just sit back and ask themselves, does the isekai element actually bring anything to my story? I dare say most of the time with these reincarnated in another world stories, I find myself thinking what a stronger story it would have been without the reincarnation, which tends to be used as a deus ex machina machine. You know, convenient knowledge or skills that were learned in the first life, effortlessly smoothing over anything the protagonist might struggle with in their second. And having to overcome those struggles tend to make for better characters. And I don't even dislike Iris as is, but I kind of have to mourn what could have been. I would have liked to see her grow, instead of immediate maturity brought on by memories of a past life. I'd gladly take a girl who was inherently selfish and petty, only to be forcibly humbled after losing her place in society. Maybe adopting the orphans as her servants could have been her parents' idea, but she only starts to appreciate them and earn their trust and devotion after being knocked down a peg. There's no reason she couldn't still be unusually bright and creative, invent all the same products, and start up the business that cements in Armelia as the most prosperous duchy in the kingdom. But I think this version of events would have forced her to rely even more on the experts around her who help her bring these dreams to life, which is also a plus. The reincarnation gave the author an easy path into the world and circumstances she wanted to establish, but it wasn't absolutely necessary to get here. Like so many other reincarnated in another world tales, I wish she just had the confidence to let her world stand on its own and let her character build their own place within it in a more natural way. A big part of why Tear Moon Empire shines in comparison to these kinds of stories is precisely because Mia doesn't reawaken with an instant understanding of where she went wrong. It's a tale of her blundering her way to success, and the people around her constantly assuming she's a better person than she actually is. All the changes she makes to her life are still motivated by selfishness, a desperate attempt to avoid another execution. But that makes it all the more satisfying when she does start to change internally as well. Iris is fine as is, not unlikable by any means, but she could have been as great as her subjects are always gushing about her being, and it would have been nice to really feel that as the audience, instead of just hearing it, basically secondhand. Most of the first volume is focused on introducing all her servants and why they all love her so much, starting up her business, working to establish an affordable healthcare system and schools to guarantee literacy and financial understanding to even the peasants, and unions for the tradesman guild and that sort of thing. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it could be really dull at times. As well as just some awkwardness with the creator trying to find Iris's voice, decide just how much importance the reincarnation has on the story, which will be virtually none once Iris is established in her new life here. I think the series gets off to a rough start, but if you can survive the first volume, this story did bloom into something enjoyable. I realize just how complaint-heavy this review has been so far. There are a lot of shortcomings to unpack in the beginning, but I did actually like this series overall. I love a complicated web of a fictional monarchy's politics, and Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter delivers on that front. I think a big part of what drags the first volume down is that it's so self-contained in Armelia, while Iris is still getting everything set up. But the end of the first book sees her getting drawn back into high society, and reminds you of the underlying stakes if she can't make her homeland appropriately self-sufficient. And while Iris may have been acceptable at best, I loved what they did with Yuri's character. That this world was based on a game became pretty inconsequential pretty fast. If not true redeemed villain Iris, I would have gladly taken reincarnated fangirl Iris. She has a clear understanding of each of the suitors standing in this world, but if you think about it, she should also have intimate knowledge of who they are as people through playing their dating sim roots. I would have liked to see her use that to her advantage a little more. It would have brought some more relevance to the reincarnation setup too. But this story isn't lacking a master manipulator. By all rights, Yuri really shouldn't have much of a personality. As the player character, you'd get to decide who she is for yourself, reflected in which suitor you pursue and which dialogue options you choose. And when she's first introduced, it's as a girl who's just so generically kind-hearted that she has the potential to win over anyone. And she comes across as a little ditzy, too. The kind of girl guys will want to rush in to rescue as soon as she's threatened, as we see in the opening scene where Iris is being thrown out of school. But when Iris returns to the capital and starts to observe those interactions with a little more distance, it starts to seem a little suspicious that Yuri didn't just win over the boy she's now engaged to. She's maintaining her hold on everyone, playing every route at once in a way, and Iris starts to suspect that her airheadedness may not be genuine. She's continuously influencing Edward to make decisions that weaken the kingdom, from wasting the royal family's money to going as far as suggesting they can save money by disbanding the army. Tasmaria, by the way, is not so much at peace with one of their neighboring countries, as they've just been at a stalemate for so long that people are starting to drop their guard. Iris has a feeling Yuri may be angling for something a little more sinister than queenhood, but what chance does she stand in convincing anyone this supposedly sweet girl is a traitor when she couldn't even get anyone on her side when Yuri swept in and stole her fiancé? This story doesn't often remind you that this world is meant to be based on a video game. Like with the reincarnation, it's not relevant for much more than the setup, but I thought their take on Yuri was really clever, that the player character is still playing a game in a way, playing everyone around her. I love it. And you know, there's something else to be said about Iris, too. Or at least to be said about the storytelling in regards to Iris. I said that she's my least favorite kind of isekai protagonist. The too perfect, beloved by all, wish fulfillment vessel. But as the story continues, it starts to become clear that her own success isn't just about her. There's a greater underlying purpose to all that Iris accomplishes in this story. There's definitely a feminist girl power theme at work here. Iris's success isn't just about the spectacle of look how talented and wonderful this one particular girl is. She starts to inspire other young women around her. For context, this is a society where women are still basically second-class citizens. Iris talked a bit about how at the academy designed to train the country's future leaders, the girls were taking courses on proper socialization and etiquette, while the boys were learning the ins and outs of politics, business, and war tactics. A woman running a business empire and being given total unsupervised control over an area's government like she has is an unheard of, groundbreaking development, making it all the more important that she's doing both successfully. You can probably guess where this is going if I mention that there's not just a mysterious first prince out there somewhere, but the king's first wife gave birth to a princess who's basically spent her life in hiding as well. I won't say it wasn't a little predictable at times, but I did really like how they wrapped up the issue of the royal succession. It complemented Iris's story and brought that underlying theme together really nicely. And the initial complaints I had about Iris's character were largely smoothed over by giving her success a deeper meaning in the narrative. Kind of along those lines of impressive women in a world that underestimates them, I said at the start that this light novel series is 8 volumes long, but Iris's story actually wraps up in volume 5. The last 3 bring you back in time to her mother's childhood. These days, Morellis is known as the flower of high society, but as a child, she used her war hero father's connections and influence to train as a knight, seeking revenge on the bandits that killed her mother. It was a surprisingly strong story about resilience and moving forward and having to find a new goal for your life, as she experiences several setbacks on that front, and of course they weave in the love story of how Iris's parents met. It's got a lot of the same storytelling quirks, we'll call them. You know, Morellis is just insanely talented at everything she does and totally oblivious to everyone around her being in awe of her. But it's impossible to miss how hard she works for her success. It's not an effortless talent. There are instances where I'd be telling you about this side story to assure you that the real thing's not actually as long as it looks, but here I really recommend not skipping these last 3 volumes. Her mother's story really complements the main story. In some ways I found it much more enjoyable than the main story. So I guess you could say I've had my ups and downs with this series on multiple fronts. Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter isn't amazing on any level, but I do walk away from this series feeling like it was good. It redeemed a lot of my early criticisms. If you're into this genre of stories, it might be worth checking out. I feel like I've been pretty harsh about the genre as a whole, personally. There are a lot of isekai tropes that rub me the wrong way, but I don't want to give you the impression I've written it off entirely. I'm down for any story that has an interesting enough hook. Actually, one of the biggest motivations for finally sitting down to finish this one was another series that has a very similar premise but grew to be wildly more popular. My Next Life as a Villainess sounds like its story sits somewhere between this one and Tear Moon Empire, and I've been wanting to check it out for a while, but it would have felt almost like a betrayal to do so when I'd left this series hanging, which is just all the more reason to feel good about finally finishing it, in addition to being pleased with how the story wrapped up. So I hope I've gotten it onto a few more people's radars, and thank you for watching.